day in Pittsburgh's Three River Stadium, we have a rematch of last year's AFC Championship battle, the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Houston Oilers. Playing conditions today a lot better than they were last year when the weather was absolutely miserable. It was Pittsburgh's ability to move the football and Houston's failure to do the same that resulted in a 34-5 win for the men of steel. Houston committed 9 turnovers. However, this is a different Houston Oiler ball club with some very different faces, like number 14, quarterback Gifford Nielsen, who replaced an injured Dan Pastorini to lead the Oilers to an improbable 17-14 win last week over San Diego. However, Dan Pastorini is healthy and will start today's game. He led the Oilers to a 20-17 win over the Steelers the last time these two teams met. And his mobility will be the big question. Can he escape a very fair steel curtain pass rush that features a lot of blitzing like this one by number 31 All-Pro safety man Donnie Shell? On offense for Pittsburgh, Terry Bradshaw has enjoyed another outstanding season, and the Oilers will have to contain him as well as the likes of his stellar wide receivers like Lynn Swan and team MVP number 82 John Stallworth. We'll have a preview of today's game as NBC kicks off its AFC Championship coverage with NFL 79.
NBC Sports presents NFL 79, an inside look at professional football and a preview of today's championship game. Brought to you by the new 1980 Volkswagen Rabbit, Dasher, and Scirocco. Volkswagen does it again. And by these fine products from G. Heilman Brewing Company, across Wisconsin and other cities.
Pennsylvania prides itself as the city of champions, and Three River Stadium, which has hosted many of this city's most dramatic athletic moments, is the site of today's AFC Championship game, Houston versus Pittsburgh. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike ADAMLE, and the reason why I'm standing here without a coat on like an idiot is to illustrate a point. You know, on cold weather days, coaches like to play amateur psychologists. They like to psych their players into thinking it's warm when in actuality it's not. Certainly the Pittsburgh Steelers do this better than anyone. They have won 15 consecutive games here in this stadium, but they are especially tough when the weather is rugged. Certainly the Oilers took note. Yesterday in practice, several of their players were running around with just shorts and short sleeves to combat the weather. Myself, I've been standing out here for the last 2 hours thinking it's warm, thinking it's 70 degrees, but let me tell you, I'm freezing my can off, and if you're listening, Bud Grant, you speak with a forked tongue. Brian Gumbel is standing by in New York, and Brian, this concludes our 1979-1980 football season. As always, it's been an enjoyable one working with you, and I think, pal, we are going to be treated to a whale of a football game.
You saved your best opening for last. There are a lot of amateur psychologists at home talking about you right now. I agree with you. I think we've got a great game. I agree with a lot of people that today is the Super Bowl because the NFL's two best are playing here today. But, Mike, as we look at this game, we've got to think back to those injuries to Campbell, Pastorini, and Burrow. We know they're going to play, but how well can they be expected to play in light of the injuries?
Earl Campbell is supposed to be 100%. He's had 2 weeks of rest. They say he's running as hard as he ever has had. Dan Pastorini was throwing the football in practice yesterday. He looked pretty good. And with the conditions fairly dry, he should be mobile this afternoon, so I think they'll be ready.
Okay, Mike, much has been made of last year's 34-5 verdict. Is it going to be any factor at all? Is it going to be on the minds of either team?
I don't think so. If any team in football can beat Pittsburgh, it's the Houston Oilers. They beat them earlier the year in the Astrodome, and they are the last team to beat the Steelers here in Three Rivers. So I don't think that's going to be a factor. Covering today's game for NBC, giving you the play-by-play and expert analysis, Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen. And gentlemen, you've had a chance to reflect on last year's game, your perceptions about what's going to happen today.
Michael, last year, We were blessed with a bad day. It was a freezing rain, as you'll recall. The icicles forming on the crossbars as Pittsburgh froze out Houston 34-5 and earned a trip to the Super Bowl victory later in Miami. It's cold today, but at least we don't have the precipitation.
Well, this is great weather compared to that one last year. I think, though, the thing we have to think about, Dick, is that it's like a good news, bad news story. The good news is that the Houston Oilers have overcome all their adversity, all the long odds, all the problems. They're in this AFC Championship game. A lot of people never expected them to be here. The bad news, they have to play this game in Pittsburgh against the best team in football, a team that is 23 of the last 24 they've won at home, 15 in a row. That's bad news in cold weather especially.
Well, you talk about the good news. Earl Campbell will play, but can Campbell play well on what amounts to a frozen turf, at least 50 yards of it?
Well, he was trained on dry turf, and he plays well on artificial turf, but in the snow and on the ice, and we do have ice on the field, could be very difficult for him today. We'll watch him early.
Now back to Brian Gumbel in New York.
Okay, Dick Enberg, thank you very much. Later today, after Houston and Pittsburgh get done, the Rams and Buccaneers will meet for the NFC title game, and that's news. First time in 12 years, neither the Vikings or the Cowboys will be involved in that game. Rams have been in this championship 5 of the last 6. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, first time ever. They've come a long way in 4 years, but Doug Williams says there's no pressure on them.
One time you let the pressure get to you is when you read what the press say and, you know, listen to what people say. And if you sit there and believe that, then the pressure get to you. But if you read it and just let it go by, you wouldn't worry about it.
We're just going to have to stop Ricky Bell. He likes to run outside and likes to run up the middle on the I plays, M leads. They pass the ball fairly well, although Williams is not that good a quarterback. If we take advantage and move the ball offensively and hog the ball and keep it away from them, we'll win.
Fred Dreyer has never been one to mince his words. You heard him. Doug Williams is not that good a quarterback. Rest assured, his words have reached the coast of Florida. They've added a bit of spice to today's NFC Championship affair. We'll get back to AFC matters. We'll look at Pittsburgh, at Houston, and their 2 coaches. All that and more when we come back right after this. Widely regarded as the toughest division in all of football, the AFC Central, the Steelers and Oilers both had tough roads to reach their day today. The Oilers early on this year hurt by an injury to Dan Pastorini. They did it with 3 feet. 2 belonging to Earl Campbell, 1 to Tony Frisch. But as they turned into the second half, they turned in some very big victories at Miami and then beating Oakland and Dallas. As for the Steelers, well, they established their dominance early on, beating such powerhouses as Denver and Houston. And in the second half, they were just as strong. It's been a tough 18 weeks, as we learn in these reports.
Last year, Pittsburgh defeated Houston in the AFC Championship game. The lopsided score and the miserable weather conditions made it an unforgettable day for the Oilers. But when they returned home that night, Houston fans had gathered here in the Astrodome to make it even more unforgettable.
We're going to bust our ass to win number 14.
It was the largest pep rally ever. 50,000 fans waited for hours until the Oilers arrived home just to let the team know they still cared. And win or lose, there will be another pep rally tonight when the Oilers go home.
But I believe that had a lot to do with us going back this year. And believe me, we don't plan to come back to the Astrodome this year with a loss.
Getting back to the AFC Championship has not been easy for the Oilers, but steady defense and the running of NFL rushing champion Earl Campbell led Houston to an 11-5 regular season record. In the wild card playoff game 2 weeks ago against Denver, Campbell was lost after pulling a groin muscle on this touchdown. Then later in the game, quarterback Dan Pastorini was also lost when he too pulled a groin muscle on this play. Still, the Oilers were able to hold on for a 13-7 win over the Broncos. The Oilers were without Pastorini and Campbell last week against San Diego. Gifford Nielsen and Rob Carpenter did a superb job of filling in. And as it did the week before, the Houston defense rose to the occasion. Safety Vernon Perry intercepted 4 passes and blocked a field goal attempt to lead Houston to the win 17-14.
I think it was the best ball game I've ever seen played, really. You know, and I've seen a lot of good ball games, not only our football team, but a lot of other football teams play. And I think it was probably the most courageous football game I've ever seen played.
Bum and his boys know it will take another all-out team effort to beat Pittsburgh today, and they intend on making tonight's pep rally a victory celebration. Now let's go to Dee Thompson in Pittsburgh for a report on the Steelers.
Houston players admit it's no fun playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. You prefer walking off the field after one of those hard-hitting games, but many times you're carried off or wheeled off in a stretcher. Players like safety Donnie Shell and linebacker Dennis Dirt Winston play hard, hit hard, then pat you on the back after a game. Playing hard is Shell's philosophy.
But when we put the pads on and the game starts and the whistle blows, we down to business. And football is a tough, aggressive game, and that's the way it should be played. And if you don't like to play it that way, you shouldn't be in this league. And after the game, we're friends, but during the game, and it's all business.
Winston played Texas teams in college, and it's a carryover into the pros for him.
It was a personal challenge when Arkansas would play Texas, and there's rivalries there. And I kind of feel that it's still a rivalry because now I'm at Pittsburgh, and Houston is in the Central Division, and I got to feel the same way.
2 years ago, the Steelers gave the Oilers attaché cases. Houston had to beat Cincinnati for Pittsburgh to get into the playoffs. Lynn Swann and Joe Green were so impressed with the way Houston played, they collected money for gifts.
They went about beating Cincinnati and allowed us to go. And instead of just saying we thank them through the media, a number of us got together and we arranged to buy attaché cases for their entire team and staff.
After Pittsburgh whipped Houston last year, Oiler coach Bum Phillips gave Terry Bradshaw a cowboy hat.
Bum and I are very good friends. I'm probably as good of friends with Bum as I am any coach in the National Football League. And it's just something he wanted to do. It's the kind of guy he is.
Cowboy hats and attaché cases are nice gifts, but the real prize the Steelers and Oilers want is a Super Bowl trophy, and that's what they'll be trying to get a shot at today. This is Dee Thompson reporting for NFL 79.
All chicanery aside, Houston's coach Bum Phillips faced his toughest decision last week when he decided to rest Earl Campbell. And yesterday, our Merlin Olsen had a chance to talk to Bum about that decision.
Coach Earl Campbell said if you had asked him to go into that game last week, he would have played. Many coaches, in fact, most of the coaches in the NFL would have made that request. What makes Bum Phillips different?
Well, Merlin, in the first place, I don't believe any coach would ever play a player that they feel like shouldn't be in the game. I didn't feel like he should be in the game, and of course I wouldn't have asked him. I don't doubt that he would have done it, and it makes me proud for him to say that, but I just wouldn't have done it.
You face a situation this week with Pastorini back and going to play. Young Gifford Nielsen certainly filled in admirably. What would it take to get Pastorini out of the lineup if he is bothered by that injury during the game?
It'd have to be something major. He'd have to go down and not be able to get up and play. And Dan has played long enough that he will, he'll look me in the eye, just like he did the other day before the game. He said, I thought I could go, but he said, I can't, And he said, I can do it, but he said, I'm not going to be full speed. And he said, I think Gifford will do better than I would half speed.
Bum, you said that the road to the Super Bowl leads through Pittsburgh. You're here, playing in that last game. If you play your best game and Pittsburgh plays their best game, who goes to the Super Bowl?
Naturally, Houston.
Thank you, Coach.
All right.
With all due respect to Tampa Bay and Los Angeles, many people are calling this game the Super Bowl. Not only are Pittsburgh and Houston the two best teams in the NFL, they also possess two of the most respected coaches in Chuck Noll and Bum Phillips. As they're playing the Pittsburgh Steeler polka, pro football history will note that the 1970s was a decade dominated by the Steelers. There are many ingredients in the Steelers' formula for success, most notably their quiet coach, Chuck Noll. The Pittsburgh Steelers emerged from the 70s with pro football's most clearly defined personality. They were the men in black, the intimidators. They rose above the elements and their opponents to take the NFL by storm. The Pittsburgh Steelers ran roughshod through the decade and along the way earned the title World Champions. Enough, this dynamic team is led by a man who seems to have no personality at all. Somber Chuck Noll took over a team in 1969 which had not won a division title in 40 years and led them to 3 Super Bowl victories. Yet he remains a faceless enigma to all but his closest associates.
When Chuck Noll first came to Pittsburgh back in '69, he told Joe Gordon, the director of publicity for the Steelers, told him straight off the bat, look, let me make one thing clear. I'm not interested in becoming a personality. I'm interested in building a football team and winning football games. And that has been the case throughout. Here is a guy who does not do commercials, and I think that's a major reason why he's not known to the nation and why he's often referred to as Chuck Knox. Also, he says that the players have a short career, so let them have the commercials and make the money. And there's no question, by taking that stance, he's passed up hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And he's quite an amazing person, I think. I know that he is, but I think that the ball players think that he's amazing because he can sit there and he can talk to you, about anything that's going on. He talk to you about flying, talk to you about scuba diving, talk to you about stereos, talk to you about philosophy, talk to you about probably anything that you can cover. He's a very astute man. He's a student of a lot of things, probably a student of life in general. He's a very emotional man. Most people don't see that because he can control it very quickly, and by the time that the cameras pan the sideline, he's under control, and so the viewing audience really doesn't see it.
In 1974, Oakland and Miami were in a playoff game, which Oakland won, and there was a lot of talk from Johnny Madden and various people that the Super Bowl would be anticlimactic because of this great game that was played between Miami and Oakland. And we'd just beaten Buffalo, and we were getting ready to go out to Oakland, and Chuck came in and says, those guys think they played in a Super Bowl. And Chuck's mouth is only about that wide when he's serious, and it's turned down at both corners, and his eyes are just slits, you know. And he says, those guys that think they played the Super Bowl, we're going to show them on Sunday they haven't played in the Super Bowl. Joe Green jumped up and yelled, and the fire went through that team. And from that point on, the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, became the team of the decade. And I can almost point to that very instant, that was the time that the Pittsburgh Steelers developed the confidence themselves that has carried on through till 1980.
Chuck Noll is thought to be very distant with his players. I'm not sure how true that is. For example, just 2 nights before Christmas this year, Terry Bradshaw and his wife, and Lynn Swan and his wife, and Moon Mullins and his fiancée went out Christmas caroling and showed up at Chuck Noll's front door. They sang him Christmas carols. He invited them in for a little Christmas cheer. Then he looked at his wristwatch and noted that it's 13 minutes after 11. You've broken curfew, but I'll forget it, provided you are not arrested on the way home.
Michael, intimidation is generally a part of any big football game, but I don't think either team is going to scare the other off the field today.
Well, Jack Ham was telling me that he knew the Steelers had it in the bag last year when he saw Ken Burrow run his first pass route like this. I don't think that'll happen today.
I don't think so either. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, Aretha Franklin sang it, but it's in the air in Pittsburgh on both sides of the field. It's the Oilers and the Steelers for the AFC Championship. Mike and I will be with you at halftime, but for now we're moments away from kickoff. Let's go back to Three Rivers, rejoin Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen.
Thank you, Brian and Mike, and a great job. 2 quick facts. 1, the current temperature, 22 degrees. Fact number 2, the guy who wagers a bob on a contest like this says it's a 10-point game. So it is a powerful Pittsburgh team that has to be beaten. Can Houston do it?
Well, Houston has fought its way into this game with hard-fought victories on the road. They've done it with big plays and with emotion.
As was shown by Rob Carpenter in his gallant effort against San Diego. Tried to save a timeout, crawling back into the trenches was Carpenter. It was that kind of emotional output by Houston.
Turnovers might be the story in this game. The Houston Oilers lead the league in turnovers. They've taken the ball away 52 times, and certainly one of the most exciting, 50 times. And one of the most exciting things for us was watching Vernon Perry work last week against the San Diego Chargers.
Well, the peripatetic Perry had 4 interceptions. He blocked a field goal, ran with that. He seemed to be all over San Diego Stadium. Some say that he was even selling popcorn when his own offense was on the field.
That's the kind of plays you need, especially when you are an underdog. And with a slick ball, and believe me, it's going to be slick and hard to hang on to today. Those turnovers might be critical. As we said, Houston leads with 50 takeaways. Pittsburgh has given the ball away 52 times. That's #1 in giveaways in the NFL.
Merlin, they're talking about Pittsburgh being the team of the 1970s, and one of the reasons they play so well at home, and also when they get into bad weather, Terry Bradshaw seems to play his very best.
Bradshaw is at his best at home, in the playoffs, and in cold weather. I think he's the best bad weather quarterback in all of football, and he has some great tools to work with.
Here's John Stallworth against Miami. Not only can he catch the ball, knows how to run it into the end zone. But these are the money games, the ones that lead to the big payoff, the Super Bowl. And you talk about the money back. Number 32, Franco Harris, 15 playoff games. Harris has led all rushers 12 times.
And if I had to choose one back to run on a slick field, and we've got some icy spots on this field, he's right there. Number 32, Franco Harris, an upright style, has both feet on the ground. He's incredible on a slick day.
So you feel there's no question Harris versus Campbell. Harris's style is built for this day.
We're going to have to keep an eye on Campbell right from the beginning to see if he can run on this field.
And defensively, you talk about the Steelers, they're Count Dracula in cleats, number 58, Jack Lambert.
He's always looked that way to me, and I'm sure to offensive players across the league, but he is the heart and soul of this defensive team. He's an incredible player, and he'll be doing his job out there today.
So it's powerful Pittsburgh against surprising Houston. The winner goes to the ball in Pasadena.
Well, almost a Cinderella story if Houston can pull it out today. They've taken it against long odds. It's going to be exciting to see if they can make this one.
And a sellout crowd of over 50,000 in Three Rivers Stadium will be rooting for their beloved Pittsburgh Steelers. We're just moments away from this AFC championship game, and we'll be right back.
We've got lots of football ahead. We'll be ready for the kickoff of today's game following these words from your local stations.
ABC Sports presents the best of the National Football League, the American Football Conference Championship game. Today from Three Rivers Stadium, it's the Houston Oilers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Today's game is brought to you by Dodge. Test drive the new 1980 Dodge car. It's engineered with room, styling, ride, and handling. By Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. By Allstate Insurance Companies. You're in good hands with Allstate. And by Avis, featuring new 7-day and weekend Super Saver rates. Avis tries harder and succeeds. From across the Ohio River, it's Three Rivers Stadium, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of the defending champion, Pittsburgh Steelers. They were 9-0 here in 1979, the only NFL team not to lose at least once on its home field. And inside a full house of over 50,000 fans to see if the defending champion Steelers will go to Pasadena 2 weeks hence, or will it be the underdog amazing Houston Oilers, who have competed in the same AFC Central Division this year, that goes to Pasadena. Jim Tunney is the referee, and we're about to have the official toss of the coin.